I think we have a bit of a Tejo problem. I'm going to break down the parts of Tejo that make him so strong, but I also want to highlight that he is the most played agent across all regions, aside from EMEA, who have him second. So to break things down, we're going to use G2 versus Sentinels on the second map, which is Icebox, and we're going to highlight Trent, because Trent is on the Tejo on the attack side, and I want to break down some of the attack side prowess of Tejo. So one of the main components of Tejo is the drone. This drone here is very, very strong, because it does something that's very, very important that Sova drone doesn't do in comparison, which is the silence. The silence is a massively important thing for this drone, even though he didn't get off here. It's a really, really good threatening thing, and if it does go off, it can be game altering in pro play, because in pro play, most of the players, if not all the players, know how to play their util pretty well. And so if you silence them at the correct timings, they're going to not have their most effective tool to play the game, basically, which is their util, right? Because at this highest level, the util is more and more effective. So if you can put the silence on the right person or at the right time, it can be very detrimental. For instance, if you get a sentinel as you're going out, they're not going to have any of their util up for the defense of the site. Very, very simple. That also is very applicable to solo queue as well. Something that I also want to mention, which is the second component of Tejo being replacing Sova, is these rockets. And I think these rockets do a very good job of showing how Sova gets replaced by Tejo. And that's because if you put a Sova in Tejo's shoes right now, you would have seen the drone from Sova as well. And then you would see a dart that would land somewhere over here that would detect somewhere in yellow, right? You'll see it usually over here on this thing. Sometimes you'll see it on this wall. Sometimes you'll see it on the floor over here. Sometimes you'll see it on this wall. Sometimes you'll see it towards danger over here. It's somewhere over there. And these rockets essentially do the same job in a more guaranteed way, in that the support player can't just shoot the dart, right? Or this player can't just shoot the dart and then reposition, or something like that, right? You're essentially making a negative space where the opponent can't sit in. So therefore you have information on exactly where these rockets are, because they can't stand there. They'll die to the rockets. So you'll know. So you're basically pushing them into situations. This situation here is bad for you. Obviously, they're going to be pushed into a fight, and this situation is going to be a situation where maybe one of the 3 mollies they have, or 3 people with mollies they have, can actually capitalize on also blocking at this space. You can actually see the G2 composition overall is really good at controlling space and taking space, and because they have like 4 mollies overall on Icebox, which is a lot of post plant potential, and then on top of that they also have Harbor, and his ult is very good at space creation and like guarding the space that you're in with Cove and that kind of stuff, right? So they have a lot of tools to take space and keep space on this map, or to punish space for this map. And I think that's one of the reasons why Tejo gets played on this map, is because he's just more effective at that strategy than Sova is. Even though Sova does have like those elements to him with his ult and that kind of stuff. Sorry, I have to line up on the screen. He does have components with that, with his ult and with his shock darts, with his recon and things. It's nowhere near as good as what Tejo is at that sort of archetype of play, I guess. And obviously this round plays out, and I think G2 actually do end up winning this one. It's with Trent's clutch, and you can also see this is also another part of Tejo, right? It's exactly the same situation, just flipped, and then you'll see also here that Trent puts the mollies on the bomb, and that's a very Icebox thing. I mean, it happens in every map, but it's like very, very centric to the way that Icebox is played, and obviously Trent plays it pretty well here. Individually, not just like as a Tejo. Like if he was any agent, he could have probably won this. But the rockets made it easier, right? He didn't have to go to a lineup position or anything. He can just auto place those things, and that makes Tejo exceptionally strong. And it means that honestly, his mollies should not be as strong as other mollies relative to how easy it is to put them in the position you want them, compared to like a Gecko or like a Viper or a Killjoy, right? All those people have to learn lineups. Tejo doesn't. And I feel like that should be an actual cost on the molly itself. I just want to highlight the Tejo ult, which we're about to see in B main. That's thrown by John Cutie. He throws it the right way. And so therefore, all the players on G2 that are currently in B main, they are forced into a situation where they either have to go forward into like these places here and then fight for those places while being like pressured by this ult. So they're going to be very rushed, or they're forced to go back. You can actually see that I think Giorgimo goes back, and then the other 2 players decide to basically stand and fight whilst they're basically guaranteed dead, unless they can get into unless they can win their fights quickly and then move into the safe spaces, and that's very hard to do, right? And so I do think that the Tejo ult is probably one of the strongest ults in the game currently, and I imagine we'll see it go up in price, in ult price, to kind of match that strength as well. Because I think right now it's only 8, which is not even the highest in the game. And I think that it should reflect that and probably be 9. We'll see the same thing on the flip side for G2 against Sentinels this time, when the rate is kind of forced to take a fight and die over here, which is not ideal, obviously, but it's a really, really strong part of the Tejo ult. Also saying, so note here, I think Bang honestly popped off here. Honestly, G2, I think Trent had like a target on his back in these rounds as well. And you actually see, like in a lot of rounds, he was playing quite late in like rotations, right? G2 would be taking a main, and then he would be like kind of trailing behind in mid and that kind of stuff. And that's because he wanted to be the post-plant player as well. That's something we can also take from these games into our games. And one last time, looking at the Tejo ult, we can actually see in a second we'll have a Tejo ult front sight. So what this one does is it just pushes people away, because there's no way to run away from this one, right? Because of the direction. I mean, either way, there's no way to run away from this one because where it's placed. They either have to go up into like back sight, or they have to go further away into main. So as you can see, and what the main purpose of this was, is that anyone back sight is going to be taking fights by themselves without the support of anyone main. So it's ideally looking to split up the normal where the players are playing, so they can't help each other trade out and that kind of stuff. And as you can see, it was effective, right? The Killjoy got it when they got themselves killed in main, and then the Gecko was forced to stay on site and lost the fight on site. You can then see another ult here, which actually this is a quite a good ult by Trent, as what it does, especially because I don't have the sound right now, but the time is going down quite significantly here. And what this one does is it's going to force them forward away from where the bomb is planted, right? If you did it like this, what it means is anyone that's kind of stuck in a difficult position, they can run backwards away from Trent and towards the spike. But because he did it this way, they have to run first of all towards Trent, and which is not always the best thing to do, but on Icebox, and especially where he's positioned, it's quite good because you have a lot of ways to defend yourself with like the belt being on the higher elevation. Sometimes on other maps, maybe like Fracture, you would actually want to be ulting away from yourself so they can't hunt you. So it kind of depends on the situation. And also, if you did it this way, sorry, if you did it the other way, they'd be close to the bomb, right? So him doing it this way means that if they are forced to run further this way, they're further away from the spike, playing into the time component of it going down quite quickly. You can also see, I'm pretty sure he does end up getting 1 kill, and then using his salvos, makes the round borderline impossible for Zekken to win. And honestly, he got quite lucky at the end, I would say, overall, but actually, no, he didn't. I think he was still winning that anyway. Yeah, he was. He was still winning that anyway. I don't think Zekken had enough time. Really well played by Trent in this match as well. Even though they actually do lose, I think that Trent played very, very well on Tejo, but I also think it is really telling of how strong Tejo actually is in especially post-plant situations like this, as well as like area denial type situations too. Okay, so we're going to start with this round 7 on Ascent. And this is basically where Valin almost gets a 1v5, and he does really well to get these 3 kills, but he just doesn't quite get the clutch because of, in my opinion, how strong Tejo actually is. So I want to break down Valin a bit more first with what he does in the clutch and why it's pretty smart, and then why Tejo actually stops him from actually being able to clutch this. So first of all, what Valin does is he places this smoke. So this is like for security reasons that he's doing it, where he can get the bomb down without actually being contested, because with this bomb plant, with the smoke, it means that they won't just like insta swing him because there's smoke there, they can't see him. And on top of that as well, he might be faking, and in a 1v2, you don't want to just take a random 1v1. So they're not going to risk swinging into this smoke and like holding an angle on the smoke and potentially taking a 1v1 when they have when they're in a 2v1 basically. So this smoke does a lot of good things, and on top of that as well, but that basically buys him time to then go to a position that these players might not expect, right? So with the plant, it might be that they think that he's going to be CT or potentially wrapping around to market. That might be like a very good possibility that he could do with this plant. So that is going to be like in the back of their minds, right? And I think Valin does actually a pretty good job here right now as well. And you can see that they're actually worried about it as well. Like he most likely could go CT with the type of plant that's happening, and then he places this smoke. And this smoke is actually really strong as well, because what it does is it's a smoke that kind of bleeds out of lane. So he can come out of any part of this smoke and potentially take a 1v1 on one of the Sentinels players. Like for instance, if he went out of the smoke on like this part here in the corner, he would be able to take a fight on the rate before Bang could actually see him. Yes, Bang could potentially get a spray back through the smoke, which is definitely possible. It's going to just make it a lot harder for that trade to actually happen. And in the 1v2, you kind of need to be taking those risks anyway. So this smoke is like a really, really threatening smoke for the Sentinels players. And as you can see, the Tejo does actually respond pretty well to this potential, right? They sit in the corner over here, which is, you know, it is technically potential that he is already wrapped around, but it's super unlikely that he would have been that fast. So they actually take this position to hold together while the Tejo sets up this ult to really push him off lane if he was there, right? And they would actually hear him at this point, because if he did go into like this part here, there's a chance he's going to walk out to this point. But for the most part, he's probably just going to swing. And over here as well, he's going to have to run back. If he wants to get back into sight, he's going to have to run. So they would get a lot of info from this ult, right? This ult is basically completely clearing lane. And then on top of that as well, these rockets clear the left side of this, right? So he's eliminating so many different positions right now with his rockets and with his ult that it's going to be really hard for Valin to win this. So he basically solo found Valin by just cutting off everything and cutting off all the options. He got kind of lucky in a way, because Valin could have played this towards the midsection of the map, but he didn't do that because he didn't know where the enemies really were, and he really probably didn't even have a read of it. And also, I think it's pretty smart by Valin to go backside in this situation because of how good you can split up fights on Boathouse, as well as it kind of maybe faking out the Sentinels players into thinking that he is rotating around when he's not. But yeah, they didn't quite fall for it because of the way that Tejo played it. You could also argue as well, maybe his smoke maybe led them to do the Tejo ult as well. But realistically, you can see why Valin did that smoke. He did it to threaten that rather than to actually do it. So yeah, it was just like all mind games in the clutch in the 2v1. And I think Sentinels played it the most honestly they could. And it just so happened they managed to find Valin. And honestly, it was kind of unlucky he actually lost this. He was just maybe a bit too confident that they weren't going to stick the spike at the start. But yeah, I think this really does show parts of why Tejo can be very, very strong in not only post-plant situations that you want to win by the bomb blowing up on attack, but also situations where you're on defense and you can take away so much space from the attacking team on the post-plant. I also quickly want to show in this game more stuff with the drone. You can actually see that the drone over by narrate over here in B main, we will see in a second, you can see how long, I mean, obviously this duration is wrong for the spectators, but you can see how much space the drone actually gets in comparison to like a Sova drone, right? The Sova would have to actually be quite close over here somewhere to get this far with the drone. And granted, the Sova drone doesn't have this weird like disturbance over a certain distance, so it can see when it has clear sightlines, it can see longer. But even here, we'd have to get the Sova drone over to here to then see over here. And I think that overall, the drone is a bit more effective than the Sova drone is. And I think there's one of the reasons why is that it just can go further. Okay, I also want to highlight something else in this round. Not only does Trent's drone get like a significant amount of info, you can see on the map, it got like all the way through to market. You can also see that he's lurking right here. And this lurk is actually really powerful from Trent for multiple different reasons. And it's honestly really doable on Tejo. So the main thing to think about with Tejo, with lurking, is that you don't really need to have any lineups or anything. So you don't need to have to like position correctly or anything in mid to like have like these things pre-planned. You can kind of just do these things adaptably. Like you can just do it on the fly and not have to worry about lining up your KO molly from this point or lining up your KO knife from that point or whatever, right? Gecko molly, whatever. You don't have to worry about those things because you can just send the salvos in really, really easy and simple. And on top of that as well, he also, people might be thinking about the salvos giving away his position. And the thing is that it's fine to give away a position at this point because he already pressured the midsection in the way that he wanted to, right? He got rid of the voice wall, and now his team is making like sound and ready to go into A main. So it doesn't actually matter that he gives away that he is the one in mid that was pressuring that. Especially because as well, this is something that G2 and Trent, or like honestly you should be doing on Tejo as well, is that Trent is going to be the post-plant player because he has the salvos, right? The salvos, you can use them at the start of the take, and then you'll be able to use them for post-plant as well because they're 40-second cooldown, right? They don't take that long to come back off, so you're usually going to have them towards the end of the post-plant anyway. And on top of that as well, he might have ult. I think his stun is also pretty good in post-plant as well, but they tend to use it before then anyway. But for the most part, he's a very good post-plant agent, so he tends to not need to be with his team initially. So Trent can be that kind of map-focused player. As you can see, he's kind of keeping control, looking for a light lurk, kind of doing things that are like very Sentinel focused, because he's going to be the person that's going to be in the post plant. He's not really needed right now. This rocket cooldown for Trent is like the main thing they need in this post plant. So it doesn't actually matter that he's going to not be there right now. He needs to be there. Like, he needs to have his salvos for the post. So it doesn't actually matter. And then we got his whiff. Very, very unfortunate. Honestly, he didn't make the wrong play. He just didn't follow through with the play mechanically. I think that's it, right? Because if he gets one kill and gets away, then he's done his job, right? He gets one kill, gets away, salvo's up in 8 seconds. The round is probably done. I'll be honest. He gets one and he lives. The round is probably done with the round ticking down the way it is. Honestly, Jonah does really well to potentially save the round. Just really unfortunate that Trent didn't follow through with his mechanics there. I think the way to make Tejo more balanced would be to, instead of having the double rockets into cooldown into double rockets, you actually have 2 charges of rockets at the start, which means that you have 1 rocket per charge. So then you can fire 2 if you want to, and then it goes on a cooldown for 1 charge again. So then you, like a 40-second cooldown for 1 charge. So then on the post plant, you have 1 less missile. And I think maybe they could do something with the damage. Maybe they can make it lower, like one missile won't kill someone, but 2 will. But I think that might be a bit too weak. So I'm not 100% sure on if they should do that or not. But I do like the idea of him having 2 charges initially and then 1 charge later. It also adds some skill expression in that you only use 1 charge at the start and then you save double for post plant. I think it adds a lot more choice making. I think it makes him a bit more balanced overall. But I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are as well. I actually want to go back as well and show the 3rd round of this game, because this show also highlights something that's interesting with Tejo in the way that his rockets can insta-break the doors. Honestly, this is kind of known, but not super well known. You can see it here in a second. They're going to throw the salvos and it insta-breaks the door, right? So they're very explosive. And obviously it didn't like super help Sentinels here, but that was because of the gun differential, really. But they got 2 kills. Someone, I think the rate stuck the plant at the end and tried to like pressure it. So, you know, maybe in a different world he would have like got it or something. But yeah, you can see how the explosiveness of that sort of like play can help. You can do this on Lotus as well with that breakable as well. Yeah, it's just something to use in games and be aware of that's potentially happening. I just want to quickly come back to this round because I think it does show the awareness of G2 in that this play is possible. You can see here Georgimo is right next to the door, right? They're expecting that the Tejo is going to break the door with his salvos, and they're ready to shoot as soon as that breaks, right? They're going to be right next to the door and trying to surprise Sentinel. So you can see how they're adapting quite well to the way that Tejo is being played. And this is something that is very, very important to know, right? You can see they're right up close, they're ready to fight. And it didn't go well for them, but it is a possibility that you can use, especially I think would go well for them more so here if they had better guns than Bulldogs. If they had like 2 Phantoms or George or something that was more suited for the situation, because Bulldog isn't really suited to a close range situation like this, like other guns might be. So, okay, so that's it for the video. I wanted to kind of stay away from some of the more base level applications of Tejo's abilities. I wanted to talk about some of the ways that Tejo is being used in the pro games to kind of take space as well, or how to use your ult effectively, because I don't see that being done very well. And some other things as well with breaking the doors that might not be particularly well known, that kind of stuff. I wanted to kind of touch on those things and not really focus too much on the more basic things. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next one.